Today we are going to make the chocolate mousse. First you take the chocolate, then you take the mousse. Borg, 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 borg. Anyways, we're not actually making chocolate mousse today, but we are making chocolate chip cookies from the new cookbook from Better Homes and Gardens. This is the new cookbook from 1981. Now, the chocolate chip cookie recipe in this book is a pretty standard one, but over time I've modified it and I've done some of my own things to make it better. And one of those things, as we're going to get going here, is that the butter, it calls for a half cup of butter and a half cup of shortening, but I use all butter. The reason I think that they like to use the shortening is because it's a better consistency, but I don't like the flavor as much. So what I do is I go ahead and I start with butter that is just melted to almost the right point where you can mix it and it still has a kind of a thick texture to it. So we're going to take the butter that I've pre-melted and hopefully just to the right level, and we're going to go ahead and mix that up so it's just a rich consistency. You don't want to melt it, because if you melt it, it gets all runny and it separates. So when we're all done with just a few seconds of blending here, you should have a butter that looks something like that. And it's nice and creamy instead of being melted or too hard that you can't do anything with it. So the recipe calls for stirring together flour, soda, and salt. So first off, it calls for 2.5 cups of all-purpose flour. So I've got a 1 cup measure here, and we're going to do a level cup of 1, a level cup 2, and for the half cup, I've got a measure here that does half cups, and we're going to go ahead and fill it up to the 4-ounce mark, and that's a half cup. Off to the side here, I have 2 wonderful assistants. I may be asking them to do certain things. This is my son Samuel and my son Daniel. Added to the flour, we're going to do a teaspoon of baking soda. So we have baking soda and just 1 teaspoon. This isn't something that you need extra of. So 1 level scoop of baking soda. Not baking powder. It's a very critical mistake that some make, but we're doing baking soda. And then the other is a half teaspoon of salt. And for a half teaspoon of salt, we're going to go ahead and because I have the grinded stuff, it doesn't take as much. So I estimate it, and I don't put a lot of salt in because I personally use just a fork to do the dry mixture. It's fairly simple, but you want to get the salt and the baking soda mixed in, and I find that a fork mixes it just fine. Once it's mixed in, then we come back to the wet mixture over here. So we're going to set our flour aside. And once we have put this in, then it says that we need to go ahead and add the sugars and beat until fluffy. So it calls for a half cup of granulated sugar and a full cup of packed brown sugar. So we're going to go ahead and do both of those. We're going to start with the brown sugar. And when it talks about a packed one, we really do want to get it packed in there. And I don't mind if there's just a little bit extra because I really want the brown sugar in there. The brown sugar is what makes it for me. So I'll do a heaping packed cup of brown sugar. And then I will go ahead and do a half cup of the sugar. And again, I kind of really like the flavor of the brown sugar in the cookies. Some of them call for equal amounts, but I like to put in just a little bit extra, and I use just what it calls for sugar. So put in a half cup of sugar, And then it says to beat until fluffy. So we're gonna go ahead and turn this guy back on. And we're gonna beat it until fluffy. So again, if your butter is too soft, it doesn't get fluffy. And that's what we're doing, how we're making up for not having the shortening in there, is we are going ahead and having that butter at the right temperature, again, is really, really important. And now we have fluffy sugar and butter mixture. This is the good stuff. And then we go ahead and add 2 eggs. Excuse me. Where did my eggs go? There they are. We're going to add 2 eggs in this mix. And 1 more egg. And then here's one of my other secrets. It calls for 1.5 teaspoons of vanilla. When it comes to vanilla, I like to use the good stuff when I can. If you have to use the cheap stuff, you can. It is expensive to get the pure stuff. We actually are spoiled. We usually get our vanilla from Mexico and we've run out because Mexican vanilla is the best. But it says to put in 1.5 teaspoons of vanilla per recipe. And here is my next secret. My next secret is that I have 2 measurements when it comes to vanilla. I have the measurement of some, and then I have some more. And there is 2 full teaspoons plus a little splash of vanilla, because I don't think it's really, really hard to get too much vanilla in your cookies. And so butter and vanilla are 2 of my secrets for getting those together. And now, again, we just go ahead and beat that up. And try to get as much off of it as possible. So we want to make sure that our mixture is nice and fluffy. So now we've added the eggs and sugar, and now we go ahead and mix everything together. So we're going to take our fork out and we're going to get a spatula. I realized I forgot a spatula in the midst of this. So I'm going to look for a spatula. There we go. We have a spatula. And we're going to go ahead and put the mix completely in to the flour, baking soda, and salt. And again, this is the good stuff, so this is what you don't want to lose out on. So as much of it as you can get in there as possible is great. And now I'll have my boys begin to help me mix it with a nice sturdy mixer. So go ahead and get that in there and start stirring. And we're going to take a bit of a break as we stir, and we'll be right back with you. Go ahead. Okay. Okay, well now Samuel and I have mixed the dough. How was it? Did you have fun mixing? Yeah, okay. All right, well, we've mixed the dough and we have a nice thick consistency. And now the final 2 secrets that I have for making really, really good chocolate chip cookies. One of the things I do with chocolate chip cookies is it calls for 12 ounces of chocolate chips. One of my beliefs about good chocolate chip cookies is that chocolate chip cookies should have just enough dough to hold chocolate together. So there went a 12-ounce packet of chocolate chips, and I don't think that's quite enough. So again, in my measurements of some and some more, I think there should be a few mini chocolate chips thrown in there as well. And we'll go ahead and set those aside. Finish mixing, and then my last big thing that I'm going to do before I scoop it onto the trays and cook it is going to be to chill it. And so we're going to take the mix that we have, and we want it to be firm at this point when we go ahead and put it on the tray, so that the cookies stand up and then melt down and go into the right position when they cook. So now that we've got this part done, I'm going to go ahead and set it in the fridge for a few minutes, and I'll be back when I'm ready to put it on the tray. Thanks. We've let our mix chill in the fridge for about 15 to 30 minutes, your choice. Every time we do a batch, we're going to put it back in the chiller so that it keeps cold. But what I do, one of my tricks is that I have a melon scoop, and the melon scoop is a good size scoop. We make the cookie, do a full scoop, scrape it flat, and then it sets nicely right on our pre-seasoned and well-used stoneware. And I use stoneware because this is one more of my tricks. It calls for 8 to 10 minutes, and what I like to do is pull it out right at that 10-minute mark, maybe even 9. And then because the stone gets hot, it cooks just a little bit more on the bottom. So we're gonna go ahead and put, we're gonna put 9 cookies on here. Sama, go ahead, take a scoop. Okay. Oh, get it a little fuller. There you go, now scrape it off the side. And down, okay. Squeeze, 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 there you go. Okay, get that a little fuller next time. Okay. Okay. And squeeze, squeeze, squeeze. Okay, I'm gonna do a couple more so I can get it in. That timer means that that's sat on the cookie sheet for 2 minutes from coming out. So I'll put them in the oven at 375. I'm going to set the timer for 8 minutes so I can check it and see how it's doing. And then these cookies have just come out, and they have been sitting on the stoneware for about 2 minutes while we just put that next batch in. And we're going to be able to come over here. And now that they've done that, they've cooked a little bit more on the bottom than they have on the top. So I like them a lot gooey, and sometimes they're even a bit tricky to get on. So we'll take whatever we need to do to keep the cookie together. We may need to even let it be on for just a little bit longer, but I like them gooey. And so once they're there, they'll begin to cool on the cooling rack. And it looks like I may need to give them just a little bit longer. They are really close. I like them just about not able to hold together, because the very last thing I do that is something that I like and my family likes is once they've set, I go ahead and put them in the freezer, and we eat them cold, and they're crunchy and chewy all at the same time. So that is what I like to do, and I will see you in just a few minutes so we can enjoy a cookie together. Thanks so much. All right, well, we are back. The second batch is out, ready to go. It is chilling on, or it's still heating. The bottom is still heating up so I can take it off. We have cookies from our first batch ready to go. And I think my family's gonna die if they don't get a chance to try one even before we freeze it. So they're gonna get an ooey gooey chocolate chip cookie. And I guess all we need then is a little bit of a plate. And here you go, Samuel. There is a cookie for you. Daniel, there is a cookie for you. You can share those and tell me what you think. And I think the camera person wants a cookie too. She's gonna get one in just a second, but I'm gonna go ahead and take one. Again, barely holding together, just enough dough to hold the chocolate together. And there's nothing about this cookie that's good for you other than it's really good for you. That is a perfectly messy and wonderful chocolate chip cookie. It will be better after I freeze it. This is Eric Ness signing off. Have a great day.